St Benedict grew up very, very rich. There's a lot of saints that we honor in our Catholic Church who were rich and gave it all away. He was very rich and very well educated. But he was completely turned off by the greed and the excess of the world. It's famously said that he finally made it to Rome, and he couldn't believe how corrupt, how immoral the place was. This was during the time when the barbarians were starting to invade, the empire was starting to crumble. For many people, they thought this was the end of the world. That's how bad things had gotten. And so for Benedict, he went out and left the world and started one of the greatest developments in the history of the Church, the monastery system, where men and women would retreat from the world and live in community. And it was Benedict who wrote the rule for communal life, which still influences so many religious communities today. And the monasteries are so important because they kept not just the great treasures of antiquity, but helped lay the foundation for Christendom, for a wonderful sense of Catholic faith that permeated for many, many centuries there in Europe. And he had several aspects of his rule. One, of course, was to pray and to work. Okay, in other words, pray hard, work hard. To have stability in your community. Don't long for anything else. Be firm where you're planted. Another thing, of course, was to have obedience. Be obedient. That's what God can work through you. And of course, have conversion of life, which means be as best as you can to be that mirror of our Lord Jesus Christ. But another important aspect of his rule is silence. Now, I don't know, it's kind of interesting, but maybe because for many of you from younger generations, you have trouble with that, okay? I know there's a lot of noise in our life today, but you know, it's interesting. For over the past few decades, for many of you who are younger, you're used to being put into time out, right? Where you go and stand in a corner and just don't say anything, okay? In other words, you got to go and be silent, okay? In my generation, we didn't have time out. We had blackout, okay? All right? If we messed up, well, we're seeing stars, okay? Okay, calm down. My parents are here. It wasn't that bad, okay? All right? But it was effective, though, okay? The thing is, though, for many people, they see silence as a punishment rather than as something that has to be sought after. Now, did you hear what I just said? Silence has to be sought after. Because silence is the preparation for the presence of God. And so many of you know that very well. That's why you're happy to come to a weekday Mass like this, because it was all nice and silent before Mass, get your prayers ready and so forth. And what happens on Sunday? The kids are screaming, pews are being banged around and everything, you know. How am I supposed to prepare for God, okay? Yeah, it's a little bit different. But think about it. How can someone hear the soft, gentle whisper of God, that's how he comes to us most of the time, in the middle of life filled with noise? Because that only leads them to a head filled with noise. You know, it's interesting because every now and then I get to visit homes to bless them and so forth. And oftentimes I'm going through the house, I find televisions that are on, but nobody's watching them. Or people wearing headphones, but they're doing something else at the same time, like playing video games or even trying to do their homework. You know, how are you supposed to concentrate? Oh, Father, I can multitask, but don't give me that one, okay? That's not multitasking. How can you possibly concentrate? Well, now, why is concentration so important? Well, how do we learn to think our own thoughts and dream our own dreams and then see if they line up with God's will unless we have time to ponder and to reflect? Our silence must always come from love, seeking love. From our love, seeking the love of God. That's best felt in silence. But here's the major lesson that St. Benedict taught to his monks, which ties all of this together, and it's actually kind of ironic. The goal is not silence, but to have a peaceful, joyful heart. That's the goal, that constantly seeks out our Lord Jesus, no matter what life may throw at you. Or in other words, Jesus wants us to have peaceful, tranquil hearts in the middle of the noise of the world. The ideal, of course, is to be able to think and reflect and to pray no matter what the situation we find ourselves in. And the early monks sometimes felt that they were fooling themselves into thinking that they had found God that God was speaking to them in the silence and peace of monastic life. But how did they know for sure that they had truly found God? You see, a life without temptations, without external distractions, it could be very good. But where's the test? The test is about being faithful to God and His ways and His teachings when we are tempted, when we have distractions. And so as St Benedict taught, we will not pass the test unless we have truly found God in silence of prayer and meditation. As St. Benedict points out, we're able to stay focused on God in the middle of whatever, even noise, when we have that place which is actually the presence of God in silence. Because once we know what that place is, once we recognize God's voice, once we know exactly what it feels like to be in God's presence, and not something we've made up, then when the storms hit, the headaches come, when life hits us with the noise or whatever, when we have that sense of being overwhelmed, we won't be, because we will know exactly where we need to go. So don't ever fear silence. Seek it, crave it, and remember the experience. That is where God will be waiting for you to give you exactly what you need to carry on.